Wow. I don't know. It's the hardest thing to express, I guess. As any writer would probably tell you. Everyone has their own process, and for me, I feel like I catch ideas more than I come up with them. It's very intuitive and not very intellectual. You're in the shower and you get the ending of the movie and you don't know where that came from, but it makes sense. You're washing the dishes and you know what your next two films are going to be. And I think the worst thing that a writer can do is not wait for those moments, but to just force themselves to sit down in front of a blank page and sweat. And that never works. It's always going to be pretty bad. But I don't know. I read a lot of science stuff. I read a lot of psychology stuff, especially for these last couple of movies. The wisdom teeth thing, obviously, all the philosophy going on. I can't read fiction. I get so far into fiction, and I'm just start thinking like, this guy's just making this up. And I just can't. I can't crack it for some reason. I think there's so many things in nonfiction that you can't make up. It's just so stranger than anyone can imagine. And that's usually like little scientific theories and things that would make sense in a movie. But it's a lot of waiting and a lot of every time I might take a dream, I might take a conversation and kind of weave it in there. That's probably not very informative, but I talked for a long time.
You wrote one of the most famous lines in the history of animation, which is "I am a banana." But I think that there's a question over there. So please.
I was wondering how you your microphone's work. No, I was wondering how you get rights to the music that you use in your music, because it's often very well-known orchestra pieces.
This is like Abbott and Costello routine. Sorry.
You should see their stage voice. There we go. The music. It's actually easier to get classical music in opera because typically in a piece of music you have to pay for the performance rights as well as the publishing rights. With a classical piece in the public domain, all the composers are dead. And so there are no publishing rights to pay for it. And that's, for an independent, that's huge. It's a big part of your budget. And I use these pieces as well because they're just the most beautiful pieces of music ever written, in my opinion. And, but yeah, they're you just contact the publisher, the orchestra or the music label typically, and my best advice there is to just tell them you're poor and independent and your budget is nothing, and they'll usually work within what you can pay them. So just tell them you don't have much.
Thank you.
I think there's a question.
All right. Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, you've got a very distinctive sense of humor, and I was wondering if you could think back and maybe trace what shaped your sense of humor into what it's become in your life.
I wasn't going to tell this story tonight, but actually it really relates. I think Monty Python, more than any other influence, honestly. My dad used to rent all those videotapes when I was little. They were on PBS all the time. We caught that show. And I think they really just shaped my worldview. It's the surrealism and the experimental spirit in that. And I'm really surprised that there's not more experimental comedy being done. Like there's the Mighty Boosh, which is fantastic. But there's very few other comedy troupes, and especially in animation, you don't see that very much. Where they're you're not even sure if this is funny, but you're trying. I had this amazing experience about 10 years ago. I was at a comedy festival. I was flown out to do this thing. And it was kind of like one of these festivals. I had no idea what was going on. You get off the plane and you get the catalog and you see what's going on this week. and there was a Python reunion. And I think it was the first time that they'd ever been in the same room together since their last movie. And to me, that would be like seeing the Beatles reunite. I mean, they would just be fantastic and huge. And I'm pleading and begging all week long, and this thing is just sold out hopelessly. Like, I think it was sold out as soon as they announced it, months and months in advance. And night of the show, I'm there with a friend, and we're just like, you know what, let's just go to the theater and we'll look at it. Like, let's just say we looked at the theater that Monty Python was inside of. And so we go out and we look at the theater. There's a big satellite dish, and it's thousands of people packing the front of it. And next door, there's another theater where they're closed circuit simulcasting a live transmission of the reunion. And just to see it on television, the line is twice around the block. So it's just hopeless, and we're just dejected in the snow. And we're just like, let's go get a beer, forget it. And we trudge along, and we go on the side of the theater in that alleyway, and there's a door. And there's just this one guy just guarding this door. And I don't know what possessed her, but my friend just goes up to him and just starts begging him on her knees, please let us sneak in. We love Python so much, we won't tell anybody, let us sneak in. And he lets us in. And I'm thinking, I just can't believe that worked. And so we're backstage, and there's all these HBO guys in suits walking around, and we're just, let's look like we belong here, let's look like we know where we're going. We straighten up, and we manage to find our way into the auditorium, and people are still taking their seats, and a couple of ushers come up to us. It's like, oh, you don't have tickets, or you don't have seats yet. I think there's a couple in the front row. And there's 2 seats, front row center, as if they were being reserved for us. And we sit down, and there's just a guy there who'd been saving 2 seats for his buddies. And it's about 2 minutes to the show now, and I'm less than 10 feet away from the 5 chairs where Monty Python is going to be sitting. And it's just too good to be true. And sure enough, there's a security guard who I realize he's been watching us ever since we came inside. He's making just a beeline for our chairs, and I'm just sitting, staring straight ahead with my white knuckles just on the armrest. Like, they're going to have to drag me out of this theater right now. We've gotten this far. Like, I'm going to make a fucking scene. And like I said, this was like 10 years ago, and I had kind of like long hair back then and kind of like a goatee thing going on. And apparently, because he saw us come from backstage and go straight in the front row, he thought I was Johnny Depp. And he just wanted an autograph. We got to see the Python reunion from the front row. It was ridiculous. You sneak in, it works so much better than you'd ever imagine. That was an aside. That was a bit of a tangent. I'm sorry to make you stand for all of that.
Hey Don, when you create a new concept for a film, what is the process that you use, and how does that help you avoid overthinking your concept?
It's something I kind of taught myself a long time ago, and it ties into, well, first of all, I should preface this by saying, as most of you might know, I work pretty much alone. And something like I'm So Proud of You is about a year and a half to 2 years of basically solitary confinement, 7 days a week. If I'm not drawing, I'm shooting. If I'm not shooting, I'm mixing the soundtracks. It's just one long project. And the only way I can do that without getting burnt out is by not starting with a finished script. I know it's going to take so long that I can start animating this weekend with just a few scenes, and I know that they connect. And I know by the time, the weeks it takes me to finish those scenes, I've got more ideas, and I've got better ideas, and I can weave those in now. And it's a bit of a tightrope act, and usually, like chapter 3, for instance, I'm about to get started on,